Hey guys, so we're going to go ahead and jump into our final lesson here on our walk cycle. And so at this point, if we look at this character, we have a full walk cycle and it's completed. It's just pretty choppy, so we want to get this smoothed out and then start working with our graph editor to smooth that out even further. So what I'm going to do is I want to select all of our curves. Okay, so I'm going to select our curves. And I want to go to our graph editor, okay, because right now we set this out to be blocking, which is great, but let's get some interpolation in there. So click the little select curves button, and then let's go up to Windows, our animation editor, and down to our graph editor. And with all of our curves selected, we'll come in here and we'll see these very stair-steppy type graphs, okay? What I want to do is I just want to zoom out a little bit, and I want to draw a big box around everything, okay? With everything selected, I want to come up here to this little button right here, and this is our auto, okay? So this is going to switch all of our tangents back to auto, and so I'm going to click on that button, and now you can see things aren't stair-steppy anymore. They're smooth. They've been smoothed out. So let's go ahead and take a look and see what we've got at this point. Okay. So at this point, this is looking fairly smooth. Now we can do some things to continue to improve upon this. Like I think the arms could use a little bit more follow through and things like that. And so your first pass, think of that as where you're creating all your blocked out versions. Think of that as your first initial rough draft where you're focusing on poses, and then this is going to be kind of like our final where we come in and we really start to fine tune this even more. Okay, so let's look at our arm, and so as I come to, so I'm going to select this elbow. And that's some decent follow through. Let's do a little bit more on the wrist. So as we come here, on frame 33, for example, we can take this, we can rotate that a little bit more. And then the thing is if we set a key right now, it's still in the stair-steppy version. So before I change any keys, I want to come back over here down to the bottom right hand corner to the little orange dude in the running gear, and we want to go back into our settings and animation, and we now want to change this from default in tangent. We want to change that to auto and our out to auto. Okay, and then let's click save. Cool. So let's go ahead and click S. Now here's the problem though. On frame 33, frame 1 is the same thing. So if I jump back to frame 1, they're not going to match. And you're going to see a pop as you play through this, right? There's going to be a pop at the very end, and we don't want that. So with that curve selected, I'm just going to right click and copy. Go to frame 1, right click and paste. Okay? And so let's go ahead and do something similar to our right wrist. Okay, so when it comes to its end, which is like frame 17, let's just rotate that a bit more and set a key. Now since it's in the middle, right, we don't have 2 frames for that one, so that one will actually be just fine. And so let's see how our follow through is looking like on our wrists. Cool. And so the next thing we might want to do is I'm going to go ahead and hide my image plane just so I can just focus just on the walk cycle. So he feels a little jerky from his up and down position. So I think what I'm going to do, and a lot of that is on this one, right? This is where we rotated him forward. So if I select just this spine 1 curve and I go back to my graph editor, I'll see the rotations for that, right? And just as a reminder, if you click on rotate X, it'll allow you to focus just on rotate X, rotate Y, or whatever. But we primarily work just on the X. Now, here's the thing. We want this type of stuff to be as smooth as possible, right? And so this is where you can kind of come in and play with things. So for one thing, just FYI, yes, we want to create our blocking poses and things like that. And I can work with these keys. Okay, so I can do things like this to try to smooth things out as much as possible. Okay. The other thing to consider, we'll go ahead and play that and see how that is. But a second ago, if I back up and do Control Z, you can see that this line is a little kind of bumpy, and he did kind of have that bumpy type feel. So let's go ahead and jump forward. So I'm gonna do Control Y to kind of get all that back. And then I also might smooth out some of these bottom ones a little bit too. And so this is just kind of like the bouncing ball. Remember how we would kind of either decrease and make these skinnier or smooth them out, right? Or smooth in or smooth out type of stuff. Or slow in, slow out, one of our 12 principles. And so let's just take a look and see how that's looking. And I definitely think that's looking better. One of the things that we can also do is I can see that this curve is on a line, and the same thing with this one, right? And this one is, if you zoom in, you can see it's kind of adding like a little hitch in there. So we can, if we want, we could even play around with deleting keyframes. I don't want to move that. And so it's not like against the law or anything like that to delete some of the key work that you did. We still need to do it, but once you get in here, you might see like, oh, that's causing like, that's not a straight or a smooth line anymore. And so we definitely want this smooth in, smooth out type of stuff. So let's see how that's feeling. And ultimately, it matters what happens in here, right? So at this point, if I go here, frame 1, that's snapping pretty hard around frame 24. So let's see what's going on in frame 24. So let's try to do some of this a little tighter. Okay, and let's see how that's working. Okay. And this might not be giving us enough time, so let's kind of sharpen some of these a little bit. We want them nice, smooth interpolation lines. Ultimately, though, it matters what's happening out here, right? So you want to use your graph editor and then see how things look in your viewport. Okay. Oops. Get back to the Maya. So another thing I might consider doing as well, if you guys remember, if I don't want to touch these two frames at the beginning and the end because they just need to match, but we can play around with some of this kind of stuff too. Smooth some of that out and let's see how that's looking. Yeah, I think that's looking better. Cool. So the point is, ultimately it matters how things look out here, right? You could get things in here and it looks great, but then you get out into your viewport and you're like, oh no, like it's all of a sudden jerky and stuff like that. Because a second ago, like, right, it looked like it made sense in here, but ultimately you need to come out here and evaluate and see what's going on, okay? And then use what you see happening out here to help drive your decisions that you're doing in your graph editor. And so I'll show you one of the other things that I tend to see. I'll tend to see if anything goes on with these arms is that they don't go straight, right? These actually aren't too bad. His arms are fairly going straight. But a lot of times on somebody's first time going through a walk cycle, I'll see it go back and then I'll see it come out as it comes to the side. Like as it gets to the side, like for example, see somebody's arm like this, and then as it gets to the side, it does something like that. And so it's almost like you have that arm doing like a U, right? And you don't necessarily want that. So just try to make sure, like as you come in, like especially at the side, so around like frame 9 and 25, that those are pretty close. And so if you again select that curve and you go into your graph editor, you can play around with, so we have our X, we have our Y, and our Z. Looks like there's a little hitch there. And just keep in mind too, like this doesn't always have to make sense. Like I don't know why there's a little divot right there, but there is. And if I make it smooth, it might make it look better out here, and it might not. So let's just give that a try and see like what that does. Actually, just out of curiosity, let's just go to that key, and I'm just going to drag that. Yeah, I just wanted to see what that was doing out there. Cool. So let's play that and let's see how that affects things. Yeah, actually, I kind of like that. So let's look at the right side and do that too. So again, you go in here, you do your work, and then maybe see what that one does. Yeah, that's that one. So we just want to smooth that out a little bit. Okay, cool. Let's see what that looks like. Cool. And so at this point, you just want to get in here and start playing with your key values. But keep in mind, ultimately, so if we grab like an X or a Z, okay. So that's the key that looks like it's by our side. So if we smooth that out, right, we can see what that looks like as compared to the way it was a second ago. So honestly, I think it looks better. Like if I smooth this out, I see this arm starting to extend out. So we actually do want it something like, see, I'll pull it really high and you can see that this arm is going in. So it does look like we do want this little bump right here. Okay. We can even pull that one down and play with that. And so, yeah, actually I think that looks okay. So just as one reminder, you want to keep these keyframes as much as possible on the actual frame. So if I grab this and I move it over, I'm changing where it is in time. So just as a reminder, if you hold Shift and then click and drag, whichever direction you drag, it'll lock it onto that, right? So I did, let me do that again. So I held Shift and I left click, and you see the little question mark with the arrow. Well, that means I could drag up or drag down. Wherever I drag, though, that it's going to lock to that plane. So I'm going to drag up first, and now you see that little arrow, and it's just pointing up and down. That means that I can't go side to side, okay? So, or vice versa, Shift, and if I go left, then I can't go up and down, right? Okay, so at this point, it's just getting in and playing with the graph editor and playing with the curves and with your tangents and all that sort of stuff, just to try to make this as smooth as possible. Now, there is no like, hey, you should always use this type of tangent handle and things like that. This is a tool, okay? And so it's just getting in here and working the tool and and whatever you change in here, look at what it looks like out here, and maybe that helped, maybe it didn't, right? And so it's just using this as a tool and then evaluating what happens out here, okay? So just as a reminder, you can flatten, you can skinny things with your tangent handles. You can, if you come up here, you can break the handle so you don't have that little teeter-totter effect, right? So as I pull that one down, it won't affect the other side. Or I can reunify those, and then if I pull one down, then you get the teeter-totter effect and so forth. So anyways, go ahead and play with this and get your walk cycle to be as smooth as you can. But at this point, yeah, it's not too bad. It's a nice basic walk cycle. All right, and before I let you go, I do like these little follow-through motions on the hand. So I'm going to come here. I'm just going to rotate that a little bit more. S to set a key. Not that you have to do this, and it's not that it's always technically correct, but it's nice to see a little bit of follow-through, right? One of our 12 principles. So just remember, whatever you do on frame 1 or 33, you have to copy it to the other, right? Because these two should be the same. And if I click to 33, since I rotated this and then I clicked S to set a keyframe, but I haven't done that on 33, you're going to see a snap down, and you don't want that. So let's go back to frame 1 with that selected, right-click, copy, back to frame 33, right-click, and paste. And so now we should get a little more follow-through on our hands. Cool. And then we could play around with the follow-through on our elbows as well. Maybe on frame 33. I bend that up a little bit more. Right-click, copy, frame 1, right-click, paste, frame 17, S to set a key again, and let's see how that's looking. Yeah, and so you can see this little bit more nice natural movement with some of this stuff. So you can play around with it. I think that still feels a little robotic, but this is just where you get around in here and play and have fun and things like that. But I do think that little bit of follow through helps a little bit. I think this should slow down a little bit more as it's reaching its arc. So let's see. I'm gonna look at that, and I'm gonna see. Let me figure out which axis is controlling its forward momentum. Not that one. Is it this one? Yeah. Actually, it doesn't look terrible on the slow end. So maybe I'll take this one and pull it down just a bit. And then we'll come and do the same thing on our, let's see. So in that forward motion, try to add some slow in, slow out on that. And we'll try to do the same thing on the left arm. And then as we start coming to the front, maybe we want to pull that down a little bit. And then the same thing here. And let's just see like what that looks like. So again, you just want to do your changes and then come out here and see like how is that affecting things. So yeah, just play with it and see what you can do with your graph editor and smoothing out your tangents. All right, cool. Anyway, I hope this has been helpful.